The clock ticked past midnight as the fluorescent lights buzzed softly in the nearly empty break room. Sarah, a young nurse, sat slumped in her chair, her body aching from endless double shifts. She pulled a small pouch from her bag and spilled its contents onto the table, just a handful of coins. Her chest tightened as she counted them twice, then sighed. It wasn't enough for groceries, let alone rent, but she pushed the thought away. She closed her eyes for a moment and whispered to herself, "One more shift. I can do this." It was the same mantra she repeated every night, a fragile thread holding her together through exhaustion and sacrifice. The hospital's intercom suddenly crackled to life, shattering her moment of stillness. Code blue in the emergency room. Sarah's heart jumped. Without hesitation, she shoved the coins back into her bag, stood up, and rushed down the hallway. Her fatigue disappeared as instinct took over, someone needed her. The echo of her hurried footsteps filled the sterile corridors, her white sneakers sliding slightly on the polished floor. She reached the ER where chaos had erupted, nurses and doctors swarming around a patient being wheeled in on a stretcher. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, and the urgency in the doctors' voices told her his life was hanging by a thread. Sarah didn't know who he was or what had happened, but she knew one thing: whatever her struggles, tonight, someone else's battle was greater, and she was ready to fight for him. The emergency room was a blur of frantic voices and flashing monitors. Paramedics shouted vitals as they wheeled the unconscious man toward the operating area. His skin was ashen, his pulse faint. Sarah quickly pulled on gloves, her exhaustion forgotten in the rush of adrenaline. Then came the doctor's urgent words: "We need blood, immediately. The bank is low, and his type isn't available." For a brief second, silence filled Sarah's chest. She knew she was already drained, her body weary from giving so much to everyone else. But then she looked at the man lying helplessly before her, barely clinging to life, and she didn't hesitate. "Test me. I'll donate," she said firmly, stepping forward. The other nurses glanced at her, concern flickering in their eyes. She was young, thin from skipped meals, and clearly exhausted. But Sarah's resolve didn't waver. Minutes later, she was in a chair, her arm outstretched, watching her blood flow into the bag that could save him. The procedure left her lightheaded, her vision swimming, but she forced herself to stay alert. Somewhere deep inside, she felt a quiet sense of purpose. She didn't know his name, his story, or whether he would even survive the night, but she knew this: her sacrifice gave him a chance. And in that moment, her own struggles seemed smaller, her exhaustion worth it. As they rushed the blood to him, Sarah leaned back, weak but steady, her heart whispering, "Sometimes the world asks us for more than we think we can give. And somehow, we give it." The hospital halls were quieter now, the storm of urgency settling into a hushed stillness. Sarah sat on a bench near the recovery ward, her body drained, her eyelids heavy. Hours had passed since she had given her blood, and she fought to stay awake, waiting for news. Then, a soft voice broke the silence. "He's awake." One of the nurses smiled as she passed by. Sarah stood, her knees weak, and peeked into the dimly lit room. The man lay propped up on pillows, his breathing steady, his eyes blinking open as though waking from a long, dark dream. Sarah didn't step closer. Instead, she remained at the doorway, relief washing over her like a tide. She felt no need for thanks or recognition. In her heart, it was enough to see him alive, to know her sacrifice had not been in vain. She whispered quietly to herself, "Someone's father, someone's son, gets another chance tonight." Her fingers curled around the doorframe as she lingered just a moment longer, watching the faint rise and fall of his chest. A sense of quiet pride bloomed inside her, outweighing the ache in her body. She was just a nurse, struggling to pay bills, fighting to stay afloat, but tonight, she had been the difference between life and death. With a tired smile, Sarah turned to leave, unaware that this moment of selfless giving would soon circle back in a way she could never have imagined. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the hospital windows, casting a warm glow on the once chaotic ward. Sarah arrived early, still weary but curious about the man she had helped save. As she stepped inside, she noticed the shift in the atmosphere. Nurses whispered among themselves, their tones filled with surprise and awe. "Do you know who that is?" one of them murmured. "That's Ethan Cole, the CEO. Owns half the companies downtown." Sarah froze. Her eyes widened as she looked toward the patient's room. The man she had given her blood for wasn't just another stranger, he was someone powerful, someone whose wealth could erase the very struggles she carried every day. She felt her breath catch, not from envy, but disbelief. Peering in, she saw him awake, sitting up, his expression soft as he spoke to a little girl perched on the edge of his bed. Her small arms wrapped tightly around his waist, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Daddy, I thought I lost you." Sarah's heart swelled at the sight. The man's weary but grateful smile told her everything. He was a father, and her sacrifice had kept a little girl from losing the most important person in her world. She stepped back quietly, her chest heavy with emotion. She hadn't just saved a patient, she had saved a family. What Sarah didn't know was that the man's eyes had already caught sight of her retreating figure, and gratitude was stirring inside him, stronger than she could ever imagine. Later that day, Sarah was charting quietly at the nurse's station when she felt a gentle presence nearby. She looked up to see Ethan Cole standing there, still pale but steady on his feet. His little daughter clung to his hand, her wide eyes fixed on Sarah with innocent curiosity. For a moment, Ethan simply looked at her, emotion flickering in his gaze. Then he stepped closer and said, his voice low but firm, "How do you thank someone who gave you back your life, for my daughter's sake?" His hand trembled slightly as he extended it toward her. Sarah, caught off guard, shook her head softly. "You don't owe me anything. I was just doing my job." But Ethan's daughter suddenly let go of his hand and rushed forward, wrapping her tiny arms around Sarah's waist. "Thank you for saving my daddy," she whispered. The warmth of that small embrace brought tears to Sarah's eyes, a simple gift that meant more than money ever could. Ethan's voice thickened with emotion as he added, "I can rebuild companies, make money again, but I can never repay what you've done. If you'll allow me, I'd like to help you the way you helped me." Sarah's throat tightened, her eyes shimmering. She had never expected anything in return, yet here she was, reminded that kindness, once given, had a way of coming back. In that moment, she realized her greatest struggle had led to her greatest miracle, proof that even the smallest act of compassion could change two lives forever.